Special meeting to order. Yeah, I'll get there.
I'm standing anyway, so I'm probably...
You're standing?
Give me the newspaper.
Pay attention. As always, we start with the pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Open up with public comment. Joe?
I'd like to tell you why I'm here.
Sure.
Back on June 17th, I received an email from OPA saying that there would be a closed meeting of the Board of Directors on June 24th for purposes of discussing personnel and legal issues or something to that relatively cryptic as typical. The meeting was held on June 24th, but apparently in the interim, before the board met, some board members were concerned that the topic, which was outsourcing, should be something that was discussed in public. I didn't come to that meeting, but when the meeting opened, the board opened it in public and then discussed the issue. The motion was made and passed, and this group, these members here, and what you're receiving today is the result of that motion made in public. There was no one in the room, to my knowledge, other than the group that's here, other than Tom Stouse, and I talked to Tom, and he was there by accident. So there were no other newspaper people, no other media, no other association. And the reason is, of course, we'll call a private meeting and people don't show up for private meetings. Well, not many of them show up for public meetings. So that was back in June. Well, recently, I wrote something to the effect that much of this outsourcing investigation is going on without a great deal of knowledge or interest or informing of association members. And I was taken to task for saying that I should have been at the meeting on June 24th, and I could have known more about it. Well, I guess that if you want to know what's going on and not face criticism, you've got to come to every private meeting and sit here and wait and see if the board of directors decides to actually do something in public. Any of you gentlemen in this room, when you vote to go into private session, can object and give your reasons for objecting, and you may decide to go public. Now, if no one's in the room, in essence, you're still holding a private meeting when it comes right down to it. So that's why I'm here. And I received the same cryptic message about this meeting on Thursday or Friday. The board of directors will hold a closed meeting to discuss personnel and whatever. I'm only guessing. Well, not quite guessing, but I think you're going to discuss outsourcing today. I don't know what the details of what your discussion are going to be, but to my knowledge, there's no contract on the table. There may be aspects of this that should be more properly discussed in public, even if not legally required to do so, just from the public relations standpoint, to keep the people of the community informed. Outsourcing is a big move for this community. There's been a little discussion of it in the community. I was at an affair for Jim Mathias on Sunday, and that's all people were talking about. And for the most part, they don't have a clue what's going on. You know, they haven't been informed. from a personal standpoint, given if the information you've all put together, and I'm sure you've worked hard on it, is positive, I generally support the notion of outsourcing both food and beverage and golf. But I would hate to see a good idea not come into fruition because of a lack of understanding of public relations and how it can impact decisions in the end. And too often I think that the board doesn't consider the public relations aspects of some of the things that's going, especially on major items. For example, we say we don't discuss contracts in public. And there may be conditions when that's a good thing. But the general manager often comes in where he'll get bids on things, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. He'll have several proposals from different companies. He'll present those in public. The board will discuss it. They'll vote to give it to one of those people. Whether or not the association will be damaged in any serious way because you discuss whatever outsourcing proposals you've received is something I don't know. But I would just simply ask each board member to consider whether or not most or the best part of your discussions on this can be held in public and for you to vote on it. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. I think, Joe, and I'm not always going to respond directly, but tomorrow is the very first general meeting that this board has had with me as president. If you check the agenda, you will see there is a plan to present all the detail and all the information that is going on around outsourcing. The preemptive questioning of why haven't we already told everybody everything. The fact is we're meeting tomorrow in open session and going to be presenting a very detailed view of what has gone on, what meetings have been held, what decisions have not been made. There is no contract, as you say. There's a lot of word on the street about all these decisions that we've already made. There have been no decisions made whatsoever. There is complete openness and plan for complete openness tomorrow at the general meeting. The discussion today is about data and non-disclosable parts of the bids from the vendors who have made submissions to try to do the work for Ocean Pines. This is normal standard processes. When the corporation puts in a bid, they talk about data that they aren't in competition with each other still. There has been no solution made. There's been no winning vendor selected at this point. They're in play, and it would be absolutely inappropriate for us to discuss their details of their bids to Ocean Pines in public while they're still competing for the business. Once that business is done and we've selected them, the information will be made fully aware to the public as to what has been decided and what we're doing. So we're not working behind the scenes. We're working very diligently to try to this is serious business we're working on, as you say. And we're going to make it as open as we possibly can while still working within the confines of having to have a reasonably run RFP response with people who have information that they can't have made public. As to the 24th, I wasn't here. I can't speak to that. But what it sounds to me like is the board took your advice and decided to keep something open as opposed to closing it. So, sorry you weren't there. Obviously, you shouldn't have to show up in order to see the board change into a public session. But I think the idea is that we are going to keep this as open as we possibly can, and that's what I commit to everybody, that's what we're doing. And to a person around this table, they've all said the same thing. So tomorrow we will make that presentation to the public, so they will know what every single session has gone on, all the discussions, every meeting that's had there. For months this has been going on. And all of it's going to be presented tomorrow in public, and the presentation and additional information will be made public on the website just as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay? That's how I run things anyway. Anything else? Okay. Need a motion to go into closed section.
I move that we go into closed session for the purpose of discussing contractual matters that have legal implications as well.
Second?
I'll second it for the sake of a second.
All in favor?
Discussion.
Yes, sir.
I honestly don't know, and I think I know as much as I can about the subject. I know it's going to be outsourcing. I have the report. I read the report very thoroughly. And I don't really know what exactly this discussion and what this meeting, the intent of this meeting is to do. I can see that some aspects may be closed, but I can see that a whole lot of other things. As a matter of fact, 90% of what I read in this book doesn't have to be.
Let me clarify, Dave. We are not here to debate or discuss this book. We're here to debate the numbers and the comparisons of the bids, financially, the numbers between the two vendors.
Okay, let me say this. As of
Okay.
this point in time, I have no basis for comparison. If we're going to do those numbers, I don't have them.
May I?
Yeah?
Okay.
It's discussion.
Yeah. What was just said by Tom is my understanding as well, and that is that we are not here to discuss the book, the report. That will be done tomorrow in open. What my understanding of today's closed session is that there was a desire on the part of certain members of the board to have comparative data, one proposed vendor against another, and particulars regarding that are not available. And the best way to handle that was to do that in closed session. So it's not about the book. We're not doing today what we're going to do tomorrow. It's about, I believe, Tom, in the agenda setting meeting that was held, it's an opportunity to compare and discuss openly data that should not be discussed in open session. So it is not here to preempt or to preclude our getting into this. So it's that's the purpose.
In fact, if we get into this book, I'm going to cut it off.
I understand.
I think, if I may, I think that's Dave's point, though. He has not seen any of that data to be able to talk from a position of strength. Fair statement?
That's very fair. If I'm correct or incorrect, let me know. I don't have any comparative data between the vendors that are being considered.
Nor do
And
I.
I also can add to that, I mean, in terms of this meeting, as we all know, our first, or my first information that a meeting was going to be held is the same thing as the press received and Joe received. We were copied, the board members, and a release to the press that said there was going to be a closed meeting. I have never seen any subsequent meeting, and we've had conversations about what this meeting was for, what it's about. Certainly there is no email or anything that came to the board about it. So there's just no way to know. So I don't know whether or not to vote to put this into closed session because I don't know exactly what information would be
Do we have
sent.
the data or don't we? To present, to compare the two?
I'm prepared to respond to questions about the comparison of vendor A and vendor B. There's no presentation that I'm prepared to give. There's some comparative data that is frankly in the director's book. The backdrop of this is that last Wednesday, at the agenda setting meeting, that's when a desire was expressed. And Dave, if you look at tab 10 of your book, you'll see a supplement to the report that was originally done to respond directly to the request of two directors at that Wednesday meeting for more data on comparative information. That information was provided late on Thursday to be inserted into the books for distribution to the directors on Thursday. At the same time, there was a desire on the part of some directors, I believe, and Tom participated in that call, in that meeting by conference call, to have a closed session to talk about and ask about particulars that would be more appropriate in closed session than in open session. So I'm not here to give a presentation, but to respond to questions.
Well, let me say this, Pete. First of all, the meeting was referred to in tab 10, which I read somewhat with amazement, that there was a meeting of the directors to decide what was going to be the subject of this meeting, and what was an extended agenda-setting meeting. and which I have had, no, I can't say I have no knowledge. One of the directors, the last I met him, happened to meet him on the golf course. We meet sometimes on the golf course, and mentioned that there was this exciting meeting. So it's not like I was totally in the dark, but how I found out, though, was in no formal way at all. I don't much care about that. I read tab 10. It doesn't answer the questions. It doesn't provide the comparative data between two vendors. What we have is in here a conclusion by the members of the task group as to what the comparison meant. And again, I want to know, before I vote on going into closed session, what's closed about it?
This page right here, Dave, has detailed numbers coming from the bids of the two vendors.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, this is information that, according to the, if you've run RFPs, which I know you have, that's the kind of information you don't make public. I mean, it's the assessment of the bids before the contract has been awarded. So, Rick.
Yeah, first of all, let me just say thank you guys. I appreciate your confidence
You're welcome.
and your thoughts.
You won't thank us in a while.
We thank you. Rick, we thank you.
There's a lot of information we have to talk about. Some of it is going to be very open, and we can talk about it in open session. Some of it's enclosed. Some we need to talk about without the press, without the rest of the community knowing, and work out our differences and our thoughts. I see both sides, but the problem is you can't say, turn off the camera, turn on the camera, turn off the camera. You get a chopped up view. So that's why I think closed session would be better to have, just because I think there are going to be some aspects of what Tom just talked about we're going to have to go through. Other times, I'm sure there'll be things we'll talk about will be open or closed, but I think we should close it just from the point of view of not chopping off part of the meeting and part of the meeting having to open it.
This is not the first time that we've ever called a closed meeting for subjects that everybody didn't know about. They come up sometimes.
Tom.
And that's when we learn about them at the closed meeting.
Tom, Rick just reminded me of something. And Dave, this is, I think, pertinent to your question, and perhaps for Joe Reynolds as well. One of the things at the agenda-setting session that was discussed was whether or not to have, during the course of Wednesday's regular meeting, a closed session at some point in time. And frankly, after mulling that over, I believe not only the consensus, but I think we ended up being unanimous, if I'm not mistaken, to say that would really not be a good thing to do, to turn it on, turn it off kind of concept. And so what was originally being discussed as having the normal board meeting and the presentation, and then for those aspects that were private and should be in closed session, to go dismiss everybody from the room and then come back. And it was decided in the end that that didn't make a whole lot of sense. And so we said, why don't we separate the two and have this morning the closed session for purposes of those things that would need to be in closed session and not disrupt the meeting on Wednesday. That's my recollection, gentlemen.
Yeah,
I think Bob Thompson agreed with that as well.
I won't, we'll vote on this and that'll be fine. I don't need to push, I made that one point. Let me just make one other point. Okay, going back to the meeting on the 24th, which moved into closed session, let me point out some of the disadvantages. After that meeting, okay, a motion was made during that meeting. After that meeting, the results were that at least 3 board members had totally different recollections of what actually happened during the meeting. There was no record of the meeting. I had not seen the written motion until actually I was briefed by your committee and I asked for it. I wondered why I hadn't seen it, and it's because I never got it, ever, never. Okay, again, 3 different board members had 3 different recollections of what that motion meant. Things were said during that meeting, there was no recording of it, and I can tell you that there wasn't one thing during that meeting that had to be closed. Nothing. We weren't anywhere near the contractual matters. We're talking about a board policy thing. So that's what happens when you go into closed meetings, just because you think it might be better. That's a result of it. So that's all I have to say.
Well, I think we should err on the side of caution. I'd rather to have it the other way, than go in and say something that should have been enclosed that wasn't.
Can't get it back.
That's right.
I would ask you to call the vote.
Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Move into closed session. Thank you.